Happy Monday, folks. Happy Monday to you all. I hope that your weekends were great. I hope your weeks started out equally great, and the rest of your week is going to be great. It's going to be great. Ian is not yet here. That was planned. I did want to cram in some news for you guys. Speaking of news, I'll be at Retropalooza Houston this weekend beginning Friday. I just got confirmation on all of my plans. Me and Bravo are going down together as we did last year. I'm super excited about that. He's a great travel partner. We're going to show the movie at the convention. There will be a panel, I believe, during that. I don't know for sure. I would hope that we are getting some sort of panel. I don't know. I don't know how all these things work. I don't make the rules. Also, most of you, if not all of you, know tomorrow is my birthday. I am going to have a birthday stream tomorrow. So, Ixnay on the Earthnay Bay talk tonight. Okay? Tomorrow. We're going to hang out with all that shit tomorrow. I promise. I want to say hello to who is here in chat. Thank you all for being here. I see a Pizza Mike and a Bjorn Jorgensen and a Weird Fantastic Bill Wifta. Weird Fantastic Bill Wifta works too, right? Jim Larco, Rez, Keith Knight, Daniel Dorian, and Daniel Carhoonan, Ted Milich. Pizza Mike says the movie is excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that very, very much. And I see that. I also see Ben Stutley's here. Hi. I saw that Bjorn was slightly repairing some Final Faction stuff. You know, I'm the kind of person, depending upon the nature of the repair, for $1.25, I might just go get another one. I don't know. No, I probably would repair it. Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time. And Mr. Gojatron Carl is here. Again, if you haven't subscribed to his channel, what are you doing? Same thing goes for Bill Wifta at the Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures channel. He's really coming into his own. Give him some love. He deserves it. So, we're going to talk about some news here. And yes, Daniel Dorian is correct. Ian is a top bloke, one of the most honest guys there is. Part of why we're having him on the show today. He and I have been friends for a while. We've never had a chance to talk one-to-one like this. We've kind of Twitter stalked each other for a while. And I helped him troubleshoot a stream one time, and that was it. Well, we did speak at that time. It wasn't like, hey, man, how you doing? It was like, oh, shit, how do I fix this capture problem? So this is exciting for me as well. And hello, Action Figure Universe. Welcome to the stream. So I do want to get some little tiny news out of the way, because I want to kill time until Ian gets here. Two, there's a handful of announcements that were like, okay, I see what you're doing. And all but one are from Hasbro. And then they're all Marvel Legends except for one. So, sorry if that offends. I'm just going to rock through them here. And these are all screenshots from the Hasbro live stream last week. This one is a retro-carded War Machine. And at first I was like, why would I want this? I already have a War Machine. But I look at it, I look at the aesthetic, and I'm like, I kind of want this. And it's not because it's retro-carded. I just like the higher contrast design of this thing. I like the accessories. It's pretty cool. What do you guys think of this? Let me know in the chat. The next reveal that they had was a retro-carded Fantastic Four Firelord. This is a must-have for me. When I was a kid reading comics, I was reading an Amazing Spider-Man comic. He was still in the black suit, and he had to fight Firelord. And I believe that Firelord saying that he's the Herald of Galactus was the first time that I had read that name to myself. So I was really introduced to Galactus via Firelord, and I really respected Spider-Man going up against Firelord in that pivotal comic of my childhood. So I gotta have Firelord. Gojatron saying he's yes to that War Machine, big yes to Firelord. Absolutely. I think those are both pretty much needs to haves. Very smart for them. I love the color scheme. He's classic looking, great looking figure. This is a paper bag masked Spider-Man. This is a very specific reference from one particular issue of the comic in which his costume got mangled and the FF lent him a suit and he put a paper bag on his head. It's a cool idea. It's an anomaly, but I don't need it. Just like Gojatron is saying, that's a big whiff and a miss. That's a pass for me. I admire the pithiness of it. I admire the kind of, frankly, the balls to put that out. But I don't think it's for me. I don't think it's for me. Here we go. This is a big pass for me as well, because I'm not doing the 3 3/4 inch. But I'm pulling this up because it's a Sentinel, and you get your Wolverine there, and it's not to scale. Number one, it's not to scale. So that's a big miss. Like that, for that Sentinel to work in my head, he needs to be the entire height of the card back to work. Number one. Number two, again, wrong scale for me. Number three, I bet the knees will buckle. Boing. That's a Sentinel joke. You like that, right? But for those that collect this scale, I still think this is a big miss for Hasbro. I think it was dumb. It needs to be bigger. It needs to be bigger. That's all there is to it. This is a Sharon Carter figure that they're releasing, and they're branding it as Falcon and Winter Soldier. This is a definite get for me. One, because I like the character. Two, because it looks like it got lots of cool accessories. And, good custom fodder as well. Someone had mentioned to me, might have been, I don't know if it was Jim or Jesse or who it was, but they had mentioned that this might be a good body for a Mary Jane. So I'm in. I'm in like Flynn on that. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool get. So they started revealing Longshot and the Dazzler with Longshot and this little mini Wolverine for no reason. But then I saw this and I saw Mojo and I said, oh shit, I have to get this. Huge fan of the Longshot miniseries when it came out when I was a kid. And I was disappointed that it was going to be a Hasbro Pulse exclusive. You don't have to pay into anything to get access to pre-order this. They don't take the money up front. It's an exclusive, but it's a pre-order direct from Hasbro. And, the price wasn't horrible. More than I would want to pay, but considering it has the 3 figures in it, I was like, all right, fine. And because it's an exclusive to Hasbro, it's not like a MODOK where I could wait, a year to get it and get it at a discounted price. But this particular set, I was like, man, I like Longshot a lot. And I've got a couple extra Wolverines. It'd be kind of fun to do a little scene with Wolverine, Longshot, and the Dazzler up against Mojo and stuff. And there are some missing characters here, sure. But I feel like they're using this as the testing grounds to get more of the more ancillary Longshot characters into the line as individual characters. So if this sells well, I presume we'll get more Longshot stuff. I don't know. I really like this character, and for me, it was like, okay, fine. I skipped something somewhere. I know I did. There it is. This is the Japanese Spider-Man costume, but something Jim Largo and I were talking about was that this is, almost a 1-to-1 of the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man from the 70s TV show. And for that reason alone, I'm getting one. Just because. Again, very niche, kind of cool. A little disappointed that we're not getting the Nicholas Hammond one, but this is pretty good. Jim Largo speaking on the Mojo set. Price was horrible, but I bought Mojo and long shot anyway. Sucker for the era of X-Men. Fair enough. What was it, like $80? Was it? Was it $80 for 3 figures? Okay, yeah, that is a shitty price. Never mind. Forget what I just said. It's a horrible price. But for me, this is a definite get. Might get 2 of them. Might get one for it to be the Japanese one and one to be the American one. And I already know that there's Nicholas Hammond custom head sculpts for Marvel Legends that you can get on eBay for around $30. So that might have to happen for me. We talked Mojo, but here's the big coup de grace for me. This is the announcement from last week that I was fighting, and I was fighting, and I was fighting, and I said, screw it. It's a new Mezco Spider-Man that is specifically meant to evoke, the Ditko era. All right, he looks amazing, no pun intended. Just really cool. Purpose-built Ditko stuff. He's got his separate mask with the thing, and the Spidey head is perfect. This right here, like this alone, for me, I remember this layout in several different comics and digests and things like that. So just their way of branding it like this, where it's like, here he is in a soft goods suit, looking exactly like he's supposed to look. It's nuts. You've got your 4 interchangeable 5 total heads. You've got the Ditko Basic, the wide-eyed. You've got the wide-eyed with the flashing lights for Spider Sense. You've got a really nice Peter Parker sculpt. Then the half Spidey, half Peter for the Spidey Sense as well. A billion different hands, which look great. Custom Amazing Spider-Man stand with the post and the whole thing. And again, the soft goods, like, it looks really good. It's a great looking figure. $120, that's a hard sell, man. But this is one of those figures that I would get specifically to take out of the package, pick my favorite hands, and then take the stand out, put everything else back in the box, and then display him in front of the box, and he just sits there. Like, that's what this is for me. And then the Mezco Spidey that Jim Largo sent me last year, which was one of the first gifts I ever received in there. He's going to go on display with my Marvel Select Green Goblin. So everyone wins. I get my action, and I get this perfect Ditko as well. Look, I know it's a lot of money for anything, Bill, but I am such a Steve Ditko Spider-Man fan. I gotta do it. I gotta do it. Because that is the de facto definitive Ditko Spidey that is out there. Between that and this Amazing Fantasy Marvel Legend that we're getting this year, I'm set. I'm set. I'm good. There's nothing that they could put into another Spider-Man release from either company that would make me say I have to have this, quote unquote. Okay. In as much as, you're getting all the classic stuff. You're getting all these webs and all these things that would be perfect, which I could use with almost any figure. And again, with all the different, Spider-Man that I already have, I'd be pretty happy. And of course, Jim's going to bring up the one thing. Mezco didn't give us the web wings. That's true. Marvel did. Or Hasbro did. Will's like, I can buy 90. You can buy 100 Final Faction figures for that much and still have some money left over, right? Let me double check that. Well, no, you'd be $5 short. That's okay. That's fine. Bill says, if I had the bucks, I'd do it just for a definitive Spider-Man figure. Yeah. If you're even a passive Spider-Man fan and you're not collecting like the Marvel Legends line or whatever, like the person that I was prior to toy collecting in earnest like I am now, like, hello, had I caught wind of this, like let's say that this came out before I started collecting toys in earnest, this would have been a buy. This would have been perfect. I would have had this and I would have been super happy. And to be honest, if this had come out prior to me getting the bug, I possibly would have bought this and not collected. Honestly. Superpowers collection is what really, I just decided I wanted those back in my life. And as you guys all know, it just spiraled out of fucking control. And it is what it is. Yes, Daniel, I would actually, of course, Stan Lee as a fan for Spidey, but that brings something up. If Mezco did a Stan Lee and a Steve Ditko figure, you kidding me? I would get better not charge no $120 though. Those are $80 figures at most. I'm just saying. But yeah, so those are like all the announcements I saw last week that I was like really stoked about. And it's something where I'm seeing them do a lot of good ideas, but again, some of the execution on those ideas just really make me kind of just want to puke, frankly, because it doesn't make sense to me at all in that sense. Because it's just like you're getting like these great ideas, but then you're going to charge, crazy prices for a Mojo and a Long Shot and a Dazzler, and that I mean. Jim Largo says, no love for Todd McFarlane's Page Punchers. No love for those pieces of shit. They can't even on the demos that they're using to sell the product, they can't put paint deco enough to make them not look like cross-eyed. Come on, give me a break. Oh, look, Superman's got blue legs, like he did in that one comic book, so that's what we're going to choose to sell to the masses. Oh, man. The reprinted comic. But thank goodness I don't have to talk about this because Ian's here and I can stop talking about shitty toys. We can talk about good things. So without further ado, I bring you Ian Ferguson from the CU podcast. What's up, man?
Hello.
You're like, oh shit. That was quick. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you arrived as I was saying the one negative thing that I had to say in the beginning of the show. Because if you get me on a tangent about like a product I don't like, similar to yourself, you might not get me to shut up for a while.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Am I echoing on your side? I'm getting echoing on my side. Give me 1 second.
No, that was probably me.
Okay.
Which I can fix. Hold on 1 second. That may be better.
Yeah.
Is it?
I still echo. Yeah.
No. Why does this happen? Why does this happen? I don't know. I'll double check. That's not on that. Is it? No, it's not.
I got nothing coming through my speakers, like my laptop speakers.
Maybe if I just do this. Try it now.
All right, I'm trying now. Worse, somehow.
Is that whatever?
It's cool.
It's weird, man. Streamed on Twitch for years. Kind of got a reputation for being like the guy you go to with audio, and I even helped you with
I was going to say you helped me with PC Engine stuff.
Yeah, when I come over here to YouTube every so often the audio goes haywire. They're like, "We thought that you knew what you were doing, Jim. Like, what's going on here exactly?" I don't know. It could be a problem with the way that the software in StreamYard does certain things. I mean, they have a built-in echo cancellation, which to
Gotcha.
me is an admission that there's something that might be happening with the way they process audio where it has crossover, but I don't know why that would be a
I think it's
thing.
better now. Honestly, it's fine. It's manageable. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't screwing up what you were doing.
I appreciate that. And for those watching at home, a lot of you do stream and make videos. All I did to fix that was I turned down my headphones, which apparently have bleed, even though I paid good money for them not to. That's okay. Moving on. So we've kind of like Twitter stalked each other for years.
Yeah, we've been
And
buddies on Twitter for a long time.
yeah. And aside from that one time where you're like, fuck, how do I fix this? That's the only conversation we've ever had. And we have a lot of like mutual friends and stuff, like with the Game Chasers and whatever.
I'm
and
overly
obviously
trusting. I gave you my home personal phone number like that day. I was just like, I need help.
To quote Tom Cruise at my peril, if the government trusted me, maybe you could. You know, it was the whole thing.
Right.
So like, you have a whole podcast where you talk about the current video gaming culture, video gaming collecting at large, and so forth. I don't want to focus so much on that,
Sure.
though I might ask some kind of out of the box, at least I hope they're out of the box questions.
Yeah.
But before we go even into that, for those that don't know you, one of the things that fascinates me about you is your love of pinball.
Oh yeah.
Where did that start? Like, at what point were you like, I'm a pinball guy?
So I used to go to like the arcades and whatnot with my friends when I was growing up as a teenager. And they were always into like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. And while I like fighting games, I love fighting games. I've never been good at them, and I've never been particularly competitive. So while they would, stay on those machines, I'd rotate around. And this was the 90s. So if I wasn't playing like the late 90s, if I wasn't playing the latest fighting games, my options in most arcades are pretty much racers and light gun games. But when I was going to the arcades, there were still, Williams was still manufacturing pinball tables. They manufactured pinball tables until 2000. So I just kind of drifted towards them. I remember my mom teaching me how to play pinball when I was younger. I think it was a Bad Cats machine. No, it was a Fireball, because I remember the spinner in the center. And I've always been kind of, taken by it, because to me it's like a little world under glass. It's its own thing, and it's very physical. I like the fact that it's all real and it's all physics, as opposed to digital, like a video game. So anyways, I started playing a lot of those. Jurassic Park Data East was like the first pinball machine I remember really learning the rules on and being able to like advance to the wizard mode. I got to play a lot of Medieval Madness growing up. I know that was one that was it's considered hard to find, or it was before they remade it. But I had two bowling alleys in Buffalo that had it, so I played it all the time. And then maybe a decade ago, I started playing it again. I needed something to do that wasn't digital, because everything I did was video game related. I needed a way to get out of the house and go interact with something. And so I got back into it, and I started playing in League. And my first year of League, there were 16 players in our local league. And I finished dead center. I finished 8th. I was not good. I was not bad.
Hey, sometimes that's all it takes.
Right. And then, I started playing again. I bought my first machine. I bought a Paragon. It's a 1979 table. It's a wide body. It's super difficult, and that's why I love it. Work, and then later COVID took me out of it. And then I'd say about 6 months ago, I really started to play again.
Nice.
Yeah.
A really robust answer. Covered most of my follow-up questions, Dick.
I can go deeper. I mean, you can tell. Feel free to ask, and I can explain further. But yeah,
I get that. Okay, so they're saying there's still some audio delay. Okay. I do not have the stream playing on my computer as well. I promise you that, chat. Um, but before we address the elephant sound in the room, Melvor is here and says that he's seen you somewhere before. Like, it's weird.
You have seen me, probably on the CU podcast, or probably the CU podcast. I was on Video Game Years too with Billy and Jay.
Yes, you were. And one of my favorite features of that always is one of the reasons that I continuously rewatch those is just to hear you, basically just to watch you unravel while you listen to Pat. Because like, I just stare at you, and you just feel like,
Yeah,
and
I'm
you
bad at I'm bad at holding like facial expressions in. So it happens a lot on the podcast too, where like I will unconsciously like stare directly at the camera, like for a come on, and I don't even realize that I'm doing it, but someone will always point it out. Yeah, when I'm not pleased or when I think something is silly, I certainly show it on my face.
no, I gotcha, and it's. But again, I mean, I've met Pat. Pat's Pat. I like Pat.
I like that too.
He's. I don't think there's anyone in our extended community quite like Pat.
No, that's true.
that's all I can say on that. Like, real nice guy, generous dude, but boy, he will never pull his punch ever.
Well, I mean, and I don't want to talk about Pat too much. I like Pat, but and he's my co-host, and Pat has gotten a lot softer in recent years. He's not because I mean, and I'll say this, I don't mind. Pat and I used to, butt heads quite frequently when we would do setup for the podcast, and other things. But I don't know. The past, I'd say 3 or 4 years, he's really kind of mellowed out, and especially with the podcast, things have been a lot easier. Especially like, and here's the funny thing: people always think that it would have gotten harder when we went weekly. It smoothed everything out because we could always. It was easier to decide on the topics and nothing waited around. So, instead of waiting 2 weeks and having these big meetings where we'd have to like look at 2 weeks worth of news and collect everything together and figure out what we're going to talk about, which would of course lead to disagreements and things like that. Now it's on a weekly basis. All the topics have their own room to breathe and things like that. And there's just there's a whole lot less, collision.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And people have often asked, both in the past and even now, I occasionally will get this, why don't you get a permanent co-host? And I'm like, I've been divorced twice. Like, no, no.
Yeah.
And I've experimented with it, and but I think that, and again, because I don't want to. Again, this isn't about your podcast per se, but we would be remiss if we didn't at least address it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I do feel like the two of you kind of fit together like Lego pieces in a very good way.
We are oftentimes opposite sides of the same coin.
Right. And you're going to get a more, for lack of a better term, like holistic view of an issue, with different tones and colors in the discussion. It's a real discussion as opposed to so many shows that purport to be a discussion podcast or something like that. But then you're just getting a lot of, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's great. All right, moving on. I completely agree for like 10 minutes.
Right. I think that Pat and I, we are different enough, and I think it's why the podcast has worked. Even when we are coming to the same conclusion or we're both on the same side, we usually got there different ways. So there's always a conversation to be had between Pat and I. Rarely do I think we ever, fall into back padding.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, that's my hope. Like I said, even when it's something we agree on, I don't want to do exactly what you said. I don't want to be like yep. I gotta have something to say.
I think it's important, and in my case, not having a permanent co-host really opens me up to shows like this, where you can have an intimate one-on-one conversation with somebody that can tend to be a bit more informative rather than just being like a drinking session or something, which are fun in their own right.
Sure.
But don't always necessarily make for the best content.
Right. They're fun to have. It's fun to have those conversations, but it's not always fun to listen to that.
Right. Exactly. And I see the 8-Bit Eric has entered the chat. Says, "Hey, Jim," and Ian, it's Eric, Mr. Kisses. Oh, I'll see you this weekend, big boy. Don't worry, I'll get them kisses, boy. Billy's
Hi, Eric.
here. More
Hi,
like
Billy.
whack. Of course. There we go. If Jay shows up, he's going to put a hashtag no Pat for like 900 years. That got warped. I'm going to say something definitive here because I was there in his chat when that hashtag happened the first time.
Uh-huh.
All it meant was that he's not in the movie.
Yeah, I know. He understands that too, by the way, Pat. Pat takes no offense to that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'll still make fun of it though. Like I was doing a walk around at Retropalooza Arlington, just getting B-roll and shit. And when I walked by his booth, he wasn't there, and I said, "Oh look, hashtag no Pat," and I just kept going, But the internet's fucking weird, Ian. It's so weird.
It's very weird.
Because I remember when there was none. You talked about arcades and how pinball machines were almost like, well, I can't do this. These are full. I have to go do this.
Right.
I worked in an arcade for like 2 years. That's a subculture all its own, man.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
People that work in arcades, at least at that time. Because on one hand, you'd have like the super techie guys that would talk about, this board here, it's just looks like it's got the B resistor. In fact, you get the guys that are like super into the business end of it, folks that
Right.
were like into the gameplay. It's weird. So while we're on that subject, obviously you also like the stand-up arcades,
Yeah.
video games, stuff like that.
Sure do.
Space is a premium, and presuming that you had the space and you would not get an emulator machine, what's the one stand-up arcade you would get?
I like this question because we've actually done this on the other podcast, but so I do have one stand-up. I have Mr. Driller. That was the first one I wanted. But honestly, if someone was just going to give me a stand-up, no money involved on my end, probably Dragon's Lair, because I love, adore how that cabinet looks. I love the marquee on it. I actually like the game, but it's an expensive setup, and I don't like that game enough to pay for it. So if someone was going to give it to me, I'd probably say Dragon's Lair. Now, if I can really only have one, I don't own it yet, but Centipede would be high on my list. I love Centipede. Not great at it, but adore it.
Yeah, for me, for all the reasons you listed, with the possible exception of price, because it's not horrible, would be the Spider-Man video game where it was the 4, you had Black Cat and everything. At one point, there was a place that had one for sale. This was like 96, 97, $3,000. I had the money. I just didn't know how the hell I was going to hide it from my parents.
Sure.
I didn't want to get like a storage unit and all this stuff, because that was supposed to be college money. And I was like, well, I'm not really going to college that much, so I should just at least I would have this,
Yeah, I didn't spend all my college money the most responsibly either.
No, I will say this much. On a whim, I went into a Toys R Us, bought a PlayStation 1 and every single game they had at one point.
What year was this?
This would have been late 95. So it was the year it came out.
So, okay, we're not talking like a huge amount of games, but still quite a few.
But it was about 4 months in, so there was about 20, 25 games or something. And that's, again, what they had in stock, right?
Right.
So this is before Tekken 2 had come out. So I got Tekken 1, which I'd never played. I was a huge Tekken 2 fan. But I was like, I want to play it home. And I don't know, that generation for me was the last generation where you had reasonably priced arcade sticks for a console that were pretty good. Like for $30, you could get a decent arcade stick that was branded to look like it, whatever. Somewhere in the PS2 to PS3, they're like, we can charge triple for these things because these kids are into their fighting games and they'll pay top dollar and they won't be worth a shit. It's the arcade.
I was actually having this conversation 2 nights ago. So I have a buddy who lives out of town, and once every 2 weeks or so we get together to play Mario Kart on the Switch, but it's really just to shoot the shit and catch up. And we're both looking forward to that Switch the fighting game compilation that's coming out in June that has all the Darkstalkers, Vampire Saviors, and stuff on it. And we're talking about how I don't have a stick for the Switch, and like these days, you're right. You're either paying, because they're all better made, but not everyone needs a better made joystick. Like, I understand the pricing behind the parts, but not everyone needs that. And there used to be a tier lower than what, so it used to go like 50, 150, and then sky's the limit. Now it feels like 150 is really your entrance, and it feels like every once in a while when you do see one of those cheaper fight sticks, they're way lower quality than they used to be.
And so it's an odd thing with electronics where, and obviously you worked in used video game retail for a long time, so you've seen this firsthand. For whatever reason, on a long enough timeline, typically with electronics hardware, the parts get cheaper and easier to make. That's why you have your PS3 and PS4 Slims and things like that. The arcade stick is like the one thing that they just decided to start making more money for no reason.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
I have to show this. Oh, top answer. No, I'm good. Thanks, Tommy. I really appreciate the offer.
So many Tommy impersonators going around.
Oh man, that was good. Hey, look. Usually, I don't pay any attention to trolls at all, but in this case, you keep doing what you're doing. You just keep on, man. That was fucking funny. But as this is a collection channel, obviously I focus a lot on toys, but I also do the retro games and a bunch of other stuff. Behind you, I see a shitload of vinyl. And
yeah, this is that's it's hard to see, but it goes all the way from over there to over there and then all the way down. It's probably about 1,000 records at this point, I'd say, somewhere in there.
So it the most appropriate possible reaction. What the fuck?
Yeah, a lot of records, man.
Yeah. I think he's talking about the Tommy Tallarico thing, man.
Oh, the Tommy Tallarico. Yeah, that's funny.
Why would you have so many vinyl records? What the fuck? I don't think Billy's like that, man. I mean, he and I are both big on like the physical media for like films and stuff, so I don't think he would do that.
The music is the first thing I would need in a apocalypse situation. So it's why I put the most of my money into physical records. Like if electricity were to go and I couldn't stream, I would be most happy to have my turntable and my records.
Yeah, because it's something where even with CDs or MP3 players on a long enough timeline, there's not a way to play that without electricity. Like there's old school turntables where you can just wind the thing and still get what you're trying to. And that's one of the things that fascinates me about vinyl, even though I don't have a huge collection. I have like less than 50. Right. But they're like very specific things. Is that it's the one music format that has a decent amount of fidelity that more or less the format itself hasn't changed in coming up on a century.
Right.
And there's it is a timeless format. There's also the argument for the artwork. I see you nodding with the artwork. Like, what's the main reason vinyl and not something else?
So, I mean, a couple answers on that. Vinyl as a collection started very easily for me because since I was 15, I've DJ'd in some way, shape, or form. Electronic music has always been a massive passion of mine. And, when I started DJing in the mid to late 90s, 98, I think it was, you could only find that music on vinyl. because that's how you mixed it. 2 turntables and a mixer, and you queued them up together and you got them going. So I started to have a vinyl collection, and because, you know, having access to the turntables and being able to mix when I was bored was such a big thing, I always had my turntables set up, even in situations where I might not have a CD player or something else handy. It's certainly not connected to speakers worth a damn.
Sure.
And I've had a lot of apartments. I mean, I've lived in a lot of places where, you know, that's the first thing I set up, and sometimes that's as far as I get with music. So when presented with the option of buying a vinyl copy of an album, it was easy for me to choose vinyl over CD or anything else, because I'm always going to have turntables set up. As DJing changed, and this is, you know, something I find interesting, vinyl is still hugely popular today, but vinyl was popular because of DJs in the mid 90s, and the popularity with DJs went down because it's expensive. It's freaking heavy, man, to try to haul enough records around for a 2 to 3 hour set. I mean, it's insane. You pick up one record and you go, this isn't heavy at all. You pick up 10 and you start to go, holy shit, this is going to get heavy quick.
My friend who was also doing that at the time, like at that point, I was active in the music scene playing drums, and I would always be like, I got to carry these drums. He goes, pick up this crate. And I'd be like, all right.
Right. And then you got to travel with it too, and you got to hope nothing happens to those fucking records. So anyways, as it's going down in popularity with DJs, it's rising in popularity with other types of music, mostly because, you know, CDs were dying in popularity because of the internet. And I think the bigger format, the art, it felt more deluxe to people. So people would start buying records again. Some people just to collect, but some people I think just like them nicer. There's also a lot of people who want to get into the fidelity of it, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. A lot of the records that are made today aren't even taking advantage of analog fidelity. They're digital masters pressed to a disc. You're not getting that out of it, and records wear down. I mean, in reality, you know, CDs with good audio transfers are the best fidelity you're going to get. But what people mistake as better audio, I think, is them thinking about audio that they like. And some people, including myself, do like how a record will sound warmer as it wears down a little bit. But I do think that often gets confused for better fidelity, when in reality, it's just a personal preference.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's the art. I think more than anything, it's the art. It's tangible. You can hold it. Gatefolds, bigger liner notes. I think that's what draws people to it.
And I think too, like the odd crossover with that they don't do anymore for a lot of reasons, I think, are like the long boxes for CDs.
Right.
I was the cat that would be very careful about opening up the top of the long box and then keep the long box because the artwork was so nice. Even if it was truncated, I liked it. With vinyl, it's a large format, makes it hard to store, as you know, as evidenced. You know,
I dread moving this. Like when we eventually move, I dread this. Every time I do it, I say it's going to be the last time, but like I've put so much time and effort into that collection, I don't truly ever want to sell it.
That shelf is just representative of maybe 2 weeks worth of toy pickups. Not
okay.
Just all the damn stacks of totes in here. And then I've got a whole storage unit with toys. I have a whole storage unit in Houston with all the video games, which are in boxes like a small refrigerator. I got 2 of those, plus movies, which are like 4 gigantic moving boxes. So no, trust me, I get it. I really do.
So you collect movies and stuff too?
Oh yeah.
Interesting. I don't watch a lot of movies, but I consider music collecting to be almost synonymous, or I'm sorry, music collecting and video collecting to be two, again, not to overuse the term, but 2 sides of the same coin. I feel like there are 2 types of people, and one of these is going to fit one of those types of people. You're either music is a comfort for you, or videos is a comfort for you, movies. And one of those is going to be more than the other. And I think those are the collections that actually make the most sense to hold on to physically, because you'll always have those with you. Video games, honestly, I'm not super into the whole physical video game collecting thing anymore, because they're all full of fucking updates. The physical collections you're getting these days are not representative of the final work, and you know, may in fact be bugged to the point where they're not playable when you first get them. and you can always find those. I mean, games are inherently a digital medium. You're always going to be able to find those online, whether through official ways or less, piracy, emulation, etc. Music and video, I feel, is different.
And I agree with that, especially in the sense that, um, and I know Billy will have something to say about this too, but there are certain versions, certain cuts, certain transfers that once they exist on that disc, no one can come in and corrupt that, right?
Right. Sure.
And so many different editions of different movies, like Terminator 2 is an excellent example of this, where there's one, maybe two Blu-ray transfers out there that are worth a shit.
Right.
And the rest of them are just this one horrible transfer they did, Lionsgate did, that was just horrific. And yes, I said horror as in Lady of the Night ific. That's what I said, folks. Because they just kept throwing it out there, and it's subpar. It's too dark. The sound mix isn't right. But if you go search for the specific version of it, that's not horribly difficult to get, but you have to look really specifically for it, you're going to get a subpar transfer. But now that I have it, for example, I don't have to worry about whatever version they're using on streaming. I get extras that,
Sure.
even though they're getting better about that, and again, artwork. Someone mentioned steelbooks. Pizza Mike mentioned steelbooks. Whatever the case is, no pun intended. And Leon, I don't give a shit if you're offended. You're British. You have a sensibility that, aluminium, like extra vowels and shit. Get out of here. I'm just giving it a hard time. But I collect both music and movies fairly equally. I'm a CD guy, though.
Sure.
And even though I don't buy as many CDs as I once did, comparative to what I listen to through streaming, when I do buy a CD, it's very purposeful, right?
Right.
Film, for whatever reason, I have a problem.
I'm the opposite, but yes.
I have a huge problem because I'll hear someone talk about a film in passing, and before I've even seen it, based upon a trusted opinion, I go, "Hey, I'm just gonna fucking buy it," and I'll just get it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
Yeah.
and it is what it is. But then again, there are some things that like I've loved for 15 years. I never got around to getting. Like what I just got, maybe I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, was the story of Ricky Ho, which
Okay,
was that super. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have never had a copy of it because I kept waiting for it to get released on a decent Blu-ray because it was filmed, on film. No one's putting it out apparently, so I got an import copy on DVD, and that's fine. And it looks great, no problem. But as with anything else, I talk about these and the transfers and stuff to also speak with vinyl and even with CDs to a lesser degree, but with music formats and mastering, things like that. As you said, these newer reissues of albums, which some of these I will want to get eventually because of the artwork. I just want to display them.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge Napalm Death fan. I want their entire discography on vinyl on a wall somewhere in my house.
I've got some picture discs framed. I've got my Halloween soundtrack framed, an earlier pressing of it. I understand. My wife has her Scott Pilgrim 12-inch, the first run of it. She's got that framed. It's nice because if it's an album if it's an album you don't love a ton, you can still have a download version or a digital version, and you can frame that one as the artwork that it is. But you could also take it out of the frame and play it, and that's always kind of a nice bonus.
Exactly. Do you do a lot of variants? Like, for example, with the Transformers, the movie soundtrack. I have it. I have a press release version of it, like a presser from '87, and then I have the reissue, which is all pristine and shit. You start getting into that stuff, or the colored vinyls, or that crap.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. While he's going to get that, I'll catch up with chat here. Melvor says, I like the films at home on YouTube, good Blu-ray reviews. Yeah, I just go Blu-ray.com myself. I don't know if I could sit and listen to someone for 20 minutes. Well, the transfer is this. I want to read it, but I will still check out that channel. Bjorn always tries to be the person possible to movie, and you're good. And then Leon says, I've watched everything everywhere all on second time. Mr. East, one of the best films seen in the last few years. I have heard nothing but good things and haven't seen it yet. Am I the only person here that hasn't seen it yet?
Which is
Sorry.
surprising coming from a person who doesn't really watch movies. I mean, even I've seen that. So
I mean,
in terms of
forgive me, I'm sorry.
right.
Streaming the Trailer Park Boys for the first time ever for the last week, so I'm caught up now. I guess I could watch new stuff, but go ahead.
You should watch Letterkenny as well if
Oh,
you like that. Oh, okay.
huge mark for Letterkenny.
Good. So yes, I used to do a lot of that. One of the better examples are these. So I have the Bluetron disc, I have the Yellowtron disc, and I have the Redtron disc. I made sure I went out and got all of them. And that was when they were available. But it was a record store day exclusive. I was able to get 2 at one store, and then a friend hunted down the third one for me at another store. And I used to when favorite artists would release a limited edition pressing on of like 200 of a certain color, I would generally buy that and the black one, and I would listen to the black one, and I would keep the special colored one off to the side. I don't do so much of that anymore. I mean, even at the time I was doing it, I realized how ridiculous it was, but there was just still a little bit of the collector bug in me. I obviously still collect stuff, but that weird, like, hyper-driven, hyper-focused need to get every version of everything thankfully died out around the time I was like in my early 30s, and I was able to get beyond that. If they were to do something like that I really liked again, like Tron related and Daft Punk related, or something hyper specific to me, I think there's still instances where I would go out and try to get everything, but by and large, even my favorite artists, I'm happy with a standard edition, what have you. Like, that's it. That's good enough for me.
So Melvor has an interesting question, and thank you for the super chat, by the way. It says,
thanks.
What are your favorite album covers, Ian?
Geez, that's a really good question. Okay, so one that pops to mind for me is I actually really like the album cover for Super Unknown by Soundgarden. Nice. I remember that one really, really clearly from my youth, and I've always enjoyed it. Another one that I like is Neil Young's debut album, his self-titled. The art is like, it's scary. Like, I see it frightens me, but it's kind of weird. It's like a self-portrait of him, but it's I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Weird. It's strange. It's that like 1970s folk art style. Let's see what else. Prodigy's Music for the Jilted Generation is probably another one. That's just iconic to me. The silver face coming out of the ground and screaming. If I had known this question was going to be asked, I would have put a lot more thought into it, because that is something I like. Obviously, I love the art on records. That's why I buy them. But those are off the top of my head.
Fair enough. And I find it interesting. You're a big electronic music guy, and I expected more electronic music on that list. And this is just a random question, and it's a very selfish one. But when I say a 505 kick drum, do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I do, but a 505 kick drum is, I mean, that's pretty early. I wouldn't call it anything special. But yeah, the 505, the 606, 707, 727 is the Miami Sound Machine version of that drum machine. The 808, which was popular because of hip hop, and the 909, which house and techno made popular. So
I like this guy. No, as people, obviously with a name like Grindhead Jim, once they understand I'm not talking about grinding in an MMO, right? This is grindcore and punk. There's that assumption that that's all I listen to. And it's not like I'm wearing Tears for Fear shirts on my show. This is, I'm wearing Canadian death metal right now. Right. But I have a huge affinity for, synthwave, synth pop. And before there was even that word, it was just pop, like your Tears for Fears, and then even newer bands like Gunship and going back to Duran Duran, stuff like that. And then seeing how like the hard house and some of the techno stuff and industrial kind of blended those sensibilities into that harder edge. And then that kind of gave way to pushing, electronic dance into its own and everything. And there was this interesting cycle of music in the 90s where I found that like the harder edge stuff was influencing the softer stuff, and then back in and all that stuff.
Right.
And I kind of equate that, like, if you're looking at like the chicken or the egg, like, to me, the 505 is where it all starts for me in terms of like
So if we go and we look at and there's the 505 Groove Box as well, but let's see, the 505 machine was what year?
I want to say 83, 84. I might be way off.
86 actually.
Okay.
But yeah, that would certainly be where it started, because a lot of the older machines would try to replicate an actual drum kick sound, whereas the 505 the XOX line really kind of let the drum machine take on a sound of its own, and it let people use it for that express purpose. Because earlier models, even the 505, these were just meant to be backing sections that you practiced to if you didn't have a drummer around, and then they became instruments in their own right.
Yeah, and then it comes back around. Like the best example of which, at least for me, is a band called the Berserker from Australia. They had a live drummer, but they triggered everything.
Oh sure, yeah.
And but not just for like the normal triggery reasons. Their kick drums were 505 samples, which they threw distortion, a compressor, and more distortion. So it's almost like a hard house sound all of its own. It's very unique to them. And one of my buddies plays bass in that band, and he used to tell me these horror stories of how mixing became impossible because not only do you have that sound, but it's going 250 beats per minute.
Right.
And then you've got this snare that it's just so thin and poppy that it's the only way it's going to cut through something like that. And so you have this thing where you're just doing all that. Plus, you've got down-tuned guitars and all this stuff, and it's insane. But to me, it was like as soon as I heard that that's what that was, I'm like, what the fuck is that sample, dude? It was, oh, it's a 505. We did this and then this and then this. Yeah. And I'm like, you motherfucker, like it's perfect. Because so many other people were using like DM5s at that point, or like your Boss drum machine stuff that iterated off of that initial stuff. And it was something where there's some unique stuff, and there's certain Alesis sounds will always be very Alesis, that late 90s, early 2000s stuff.
Yeah, Alesis stuff has a very signature sound. I have an old analog mixer. Well, it's a digital mixer, but it takes two turntables that has some Alesis like effects on board, and I love them. But like you can pick them out of a lineup.
Oh, yeah. Like a question from chat, Ben Sutley's asking me if I ever used electronic drum stuff live. Yes, I used a DM5 specifically for my kick drums. I would trigger those because, again, in that heavier stuff at those velocities, mixing high-speed drums at volume when you're competing with guitars tuned to B or A, fucking forget it. So I had to put something in there that had like some mid, because your traditional sound guy, if you're not bringing your own on the road, they're like, oh, bass drum should sound low and throaty with lots of, chamber. But then you're going, and it just sounds like, frankly, someone, motorboating someone while they're farting. Like, that's just what it would sound like. Sure. And it's fun, but it doesn't do anything for your song.
Right.
So I'd use the DM5 as something. I would say, look, you mix the kick drum as bassy as you want, bleed this in so you're going to get some cut. Otherwise, you're going to have problems, and I'm going to punch you after the kick. So that would kind of be how that would go. But that's as far as it went for me. I would never use electronic kits live. Would never trigger the snare. In fact, I almost got into several fistfights over the years with people that did trigger their snare. I'm like, just hit harder, you fucking asshole.
Right.
That would be my whole thing. Are there any weird, like, DJ cheater shit? Like, I know that, like, a lot, like in the early days of hip hop, there'd be a lot of like talk about my DJ is the best DJ and he can do this, doesn't use a transform clutch and all this stuff. But like,
yeah, so in DJing, like that, there's always been okay. So when DJing went from turntables to digital, CD or MP3 wave files, etc. There was a lot of chatter over what is just generally called the sync button, which is a button that you press when you load a new song in or put a new CD in, The computers, figure out the BPM, and then you press the sync button and it syncs it to what else you're using, or whatever, but the other song you're playing, so that when you do cue it up, at the very least, your beats will match, or ideally they will match. So you're not going to get that train wreck galloping sound. That means you're doing a bad job. And it opened up DJing for a lot of people. So I can DJ by ear. I learned on turntables. It's a pain in the fucking ass. I think it's a neat party trick and it's a cool skill to have, but I don't get, so there was a huge, like, DJs just everywhere started decrying people who were using the sync button as cheaters. You're cheating. You're not putting the time in. Heavy gatekeeping of the hobby. And I get it. It's one of those situations where people are like, oh, well, I had to do it. You should too. But I mean, no, fuck that. If someone else can get into the meat of DJing without having that huge barrier to entry, I'm all for it. Because at the end of the day, being a DJ is about one thing, and it's about creating a good set that, moves and changes, especially if it's live with the people who are dancing. And you just want to put on a good show. You want people to go home and remember, damn, that was some good music. That DJ really helped us have a good night, et cetera, et cetera. And none of that, absolutely none of that, has anything to do with whether or not you can adjust the song from 120 BPM to 125 BPM in your ear in enough time. It shouldn't have to. So it's opened it up, but the craft is still there, which is choosing the right songs, mixing them in and out the right time, doing your sampling, doing your teases, getting the crowd into it. You just don't have to learn the bullshit first. And I'll tell you this, even though the barrier to entry has mostly been removed for DJs, there still aren't a ton of good ones. And it's because it had nothing to do. There were a lot of shitty DJs who got by on the fact that they knew how to beat match, and now those shitty DJs can't do that anymore. So right. I'm all for it. We end up getting better music and better mixes.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because it's certainly not a one-to-one analog, no pun intended, of what the drumming thing, where it's a lot of guys who trigger everything right away. Like, they're not learning the nuances of dynamics. They're not learning how to play dynamically, and they're not going to go long. Same with the guys that will sit in the basement and only play by themselves in a click track, not play along the songs or with other people. And they're just worried about playing as like an athletic exercise almost. They just want it to be pristine, perfect, and all this stuff. And they're not learning history. They're not learning. So yeah, they're technically proficient drummers who can lay down a track and they'll get your job done in the studio. But if I wanted that, I can just program them in MIDI and go fuck you. Like, sure. But that's, I think, so it is similar in a sense, but, and sure, there's plenty of things, and any hobby, any pursuit, there's going to be some shortcut. There always is, right?
Yeah.
And I would agree that most of the time, those who exploit the shortcuts without any ambition to do better, they tend to weed themselves out. You would hope, and yet dubstep exists. So that's, that kind of deflates my argument completely. As someone who does come from that electronic music background that did have to learn things, quote, the hard way. How do you feel about things like dubstep and all these things that on the surface don't appear to have the same level of commitment to craft?
Okay, so it's fun. Dubstep, as most Americans know it, is not dubstep. I mean, it even in some like record buying websites or whatever, it's called US dubstep. Mm-hmm. Dubstep in and of itself, you can pull from a lot of places, but a lot of people like to point to Burial from the UK or Banga and Scream from the UK. And, what they put out is very, very different. And I'm not just saying like, oh, you don't like this, try another song that sounds kind of like this and maybe you'll like it. No, I mean, it's like night and day different. It's dubby and it's steppy, unlike US dubstep. There's a lot of, it's very rhythm and beat focused, and it's good stuff. US dubstep, Here's my relationship with US dubstep. Um, I don't think it's artless. I do think it's 100% not for me. And I tried to make a concerted effort about 5-10 years ago to really be less of a grumpy old man. And if the kids like it, that's fine. I just don't want to fucking listen to it. I don't want to listen to it. My brother, who's a little bit younger than me, does sound for raves and parties in Buffalo, New York. And
Mm-hmm.
he's actually sent me a lot of, dubstep and mixes that some of the DJs have done there. And it really is just a very broad sound that I think everyone just associated with to use the cliche, the robot dinosaurs fighting each other. Like not
Yeah,
all of
the
it sounds that way.
bomb bomb.
It's a very
Yeah,
specific set of it. So again, like I said, the people who like that, more power to you. I can't fucking do it. But I'm not going to sit there and call it shit because I listened to a lot of shit when I was younger that I still listen to now that I'm sure my parents never figured out why I like. And I share a lot of tastes with my parents. But I also would say that, there's been this movement in electronic music over the past couple of years, past decade, to associate an entire genre, an entire subgenre of music. And it's happened with house, it's happened with trance, it happened with dubstep and D&B, where they really try to identify it by one commercially plausible sound. And
sure.
that is just a detriment, both to the music itself and to people who would normally explore a genre and see what's there.
And and spoilers, and I'm sure you knew this. I was baiting you because I I have had people pull back the layer and say, okay, here's what actual dubstep is, and it's not
Yeah.
this and all that stuff. And I was curious what you're, because we're cut from similar cloth. Where my gut reaction is to rail against things that I find to be incomprehensible or stupid. But I've tried very hard in the last 10 years to be like, no, let them have their thing. I have this. I'm fine. It's okay. It doesn't hurt me. Is there anything in the music that you love the most, right? Have you ever seen an appropriation of that made
Yeah.
you just freak?
Yeah,
like the
I
example
can I
I
can
will
give you this.
give.
Like it's leaping out of my mouth.
Okay.
So I was a big Aphex Twin fan, still am. Big Aphex Twin fan, big fan of IDM music. Loved it when it wasn't popular. When people are like, "What is this noise?" Probably my version of kids today's dubstep. Um, and it started to get popular, and it started to get ripped by various artists. And even though I like the band somewhat, the most glaring example of it, and one that I'll always hate, was it's Idiotech off of Radiohead's Kid A.
Okay.
It sounds like he just found a B-side on a Warp Records single that came out in the mid 90s and fucking lifted it and dropped it on his album. And it's not so much that he was experimenting. And, I'm happy when artists experiment, but it was the fact, and maybe this isn't necessarily his fault, it's more music media, but there was all this talk, and he is a good musician, he is intelligent, but there was all this talk about how genius he was on that record, Tom
Mm,
York and the band. And depending on what music you had listened to by that point, you realized it to be a series of kind of thinly coated, rewarmed, half-baked bullshit. But I mean,
sure.
honestly, since the dawn of time, that's been happening. They'll be like, some people will love Elvis and champion him as a genius, and other people will be like, all of that music is stolen.
Right.
We're always taking inspiration. It's just how blatant is it sometimes?
Well, yeah, and the example I was going to give, which I'm a broken record, no pun intended again. Um, but the term grindcore itself,
Sure.
like from '87 when it was coined, all the way up to around 2005, it was punk infused metal at extremely high velocity, typically with political or otherwise thought provoking lyrics. That's
Yeah.
essentially what grindcore had been for that whole time. Somewhere around 2005, someone decided that they're going to do like gore influenced stuff with ultra low vocals and drum machines and call that grindcore. And I'm like, no, get your own tag.
And then
Like,
that's what
it's
everything
not
afterwards became. It's yeah,
right. And it was just like, no, like this is
sure,
like there's nothing wrong with the music they're making at all, and there's merit in it. Even if I think they dressed silly, I don't. I think they were dressed like they were going to a hip hop concert, but then they went on stage and started squealing like pigs, and everyone was confused. But it was decent music most of the time, and I couldn't figure like why would you just say, "Well, we're this,"
yeah,
because the kid that hears that music likes it and then goes to a record store to buy it. Most of your savvy record stores aren't going to put them in that genre; they'll put them in like death metal or something like that.
yes,
And I don't know if it was a move to try and differentiate from the death metal tag or what, if it was lazy. Because a kid that goes to the store, buys a copy of Scum, is going to be really upset because
sure,
that's a very thin sounding record that basically is the Muppet Show on an acid trip. It is nothing like that 2005 version of
sure.
grindcore. And then of course you've got the whole like Vanilla Ice thing with it's not the same. And there's always going to be someone taking something and reinventing it or lifting it or whatever. Um, and what's funny to me when you look at film and video games, people seem less upset by that sort of a thing. Most because in video games we have a lot of homages,
Sure.
uh, that people are just like, oh, this reminds me of Contra, or this reminds me of whatever. And it's welcome for whatever reason. People tend not to. Have you noticed that? Like, that's weird to me.
I mean, so you mean in terms of like not hyper and like the over generalization of something?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree. In video games, people do, especially lately, since modern times, I find less people trying to peg a video game in a certain hole. Is that yes? So I feel like there's less of a focus on, well, this is an FPS or this is an RPG. Integrating of RPG elements into all sorts of games, which I would say probably started in earnest in the PlayStation 1 era. Um,
Hmm.
has kind of blurred the lines between a lot of what video games are, to the point where now we kind of think about, well, what perspective do we enjoy to play our video games in? Do we like first person perspectives or do we like third person perspectives? It's what kind of art do we prefer in our video games? Do you like an anime style to your video games, or do you like a Western Dungeons and Dragons style? It's so much less than, well, I like shooters and RPGs, and you like fighters and you like racers. It's totally different now because
Yeah.
every sort of game seems to have a part or a piece from a different genre in it.
And I think for me, the video game that kind of blew the doors off of that, and someone at of all places at GameStop had me pegged. Like he's like, aha, I've got this guy. And he said, I think I've got the right game for this dude. And he hands me a copy of Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Oh, okay,
And that just busted my whole world apart because I enjoyed the leveling aspect and the customization, but it didn't go so deep that I was taken out of the game. That's the line that an RPG sometimes crosses that I'm not a fan of. I'm a huge Destiny guy, but I still play with essentially the same loadout I've had for like 5 years.
sure.
I like my shotgun, my auto rifle, my rocket launcher. Leave me alone.
You're
Like these
not
are
you're
all
not
great new
concerned
weapons.
about min maxing everything. You just want to have a good time.
Mm-mm. No, I just get the right. I get something that looks like a good stat roll on my armor that
Right.
looks okay, and I throw the transmog on it, and I just go kill aliens. I'm happy. Um,
Sure.
I am fully capable of diving deep into that stuff. I have the mindset for it, but when I'm sitting down to play a video game at this stage of my life, it's for escapism and for fun. It is not to have a hobby level obsession with something.
Right.
Um, I got deep into Destiny mainly because I was streaming it and it was something where people would ask questions. So it literally paid to know the answer to that question.
Hmm.
Well, I haven't been streaming Destiny near as much in the last couple of years for many reasons. people still come to me asking me, well, what about this? I'm like, dude, I haven't played in like a month and a half. Like, I don't know,
Right.
and like there's a new season starting tomorrow, and it's my birthday tomorrow. And it was like, do I want to spend my birthday playing Destiny? No, no, I don't. I'm going to be over here streaming just to have some fun with some folks. But I find that
Happy
so
early birthday.
interesting. Well, thank you. That wasn't a bait, by the way.
No,
Um,
I don't think it was.
okay, fair enough. It's. I think there's any creative or nostalgic, non-essential endeavor that exists. I think there's a point to where one can not necessarily go too deep because everyone's got their risk profiles and all this crap as far as like what's healthy for them. Um, but for the things that you love, whether it's
Mhm.
pinball, whether it's vinyl collecting, whether it's the electronic music, whatever, have you ever had a point where you went, okay, I have to back up a little bit? I mean, aside from the aforementioned, getting multiple copies of something,
Sure.
is there a point where whether yourself or you saw a trend that made you go, that's a bit much?
I got rid of my NES games and really started breaking down my video game collection. I would say probably around 2014. And unfortunately with NES, I missed the prime prices by about 2 years, but
Mhm.
it was kind of like the record thing, but the records I can always justify. I always see value in them. The NES games I had gotten really into collecting in the late 90s, when NES games were really just cratering in price. And I kept up. I moved out to San Diego in 2005, and moving all the NES games was a massive, massive pain in the ass.
Mm.
And I got out here. I started working at Luna, where I worked for 15 years. And, I was still buying games here and there. But I, I there was just something in the back of my head that was like, I don't have this anymore. I don't have the passion for this anymore. And the one day it was after we did one of the first NES marathons, the first, second, maybe third one. And I really enjoyed playing Snoopy's Spectacular Sports or Silly Sports or whatever it was. And I
Mhm.
bought a copy from Luna and I brought it home and I looked at it and I said, why the fuck did I buy this? Like, I
Yeah.
just like, and I threw it on top of this big pile that was gathering dust. And I was like, this is too much. I was like, being a collector just to say I'm a collector, I it's I hated it. So what I did was when I started thinking this, it was also around a time where I was not making as much money. Um, and I, was going to come up short on bills. And I sold a
Mhm.
couple of the expensive games I had for the NES. I had probably about 550 games at this time.
Okay.
Um, and this is with every collection. Once a couple pieces go, I find it easy to let the whole thing vanish. So over
Yeah.
the next like year and a half at conventions, I took and I sold all of my NES games except for the 35 or 40 that I had as a kid or were given to me as gifts. I don't like to get rid of gifts.
Right.
So I kept those. And then I did that and I looked around and I was like, I was at one point like really into this collecting thing, but now I feel like I'm doing it because it's what I've done for 5 or 6 years,
Sure.
and I got rid of most of it. I get a lot of shit sometimes online from like detractors who are like, "Ooh, you sit there high and mighty," people who comment on the podcast, on your throne of expensive video games. Fuckers, I've got maybe like, and I know this is more than most people, but I've got probably about 400 games in this house that are mine. And honestly, I don't even, it's like, and I would say half of that are Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and Game Boy Color games. So we're talking a
Sure.
small box. And then I have my
Yeah.
PC Engine games. Yeah, it's one of, I think the greatest misconceptions is I'm not a big video game collector. I buy most of my modern stuff digitally. And I do still buy Game Boy and PC Engine stuff. But other than that, I'm pretty average on it.
Yeah. You transferred into something that I feel that I am, but I'm sometimes will jump out of this. What I call the rainy day collector, meaning you have the nice to haves. You have the stuff that if all I had was this console or this, a Blu-ray player or a toy shelf or whatever, you get the stuff that brings you the most joy and you keep it there for the most part within reason. Um, I don't know that there's anything I collect that I can honestly say that I had to have everything in
Mhm.
terms of a genre, in terms of like a toy, toys, video games, whatever. Even though I know chat's about to blow me up right now because there is one line that I've committed to having retail complete, but it's only
Okay.
because it's a modern line and it's reasonably priced. It was Masters of the Universe, the
I was gonna
Origins
say,
line.
is it the Modu stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like
Cool stuff.
it's one of those things where the original line was so prolific, ridiculously so,
Yeah.
that to have the opportunity to have that now, again, at a decent price, I I make enough money, it'll look
Hey,
pretty on my shelf, who cares?
if you've got the space and the money, yeah, who gives
Right.
a shit?
Well, the space, not so much, but I'm working on that. I'm working on buying a
Space is
house,
yeah.
but I'm looking on
Space
buying
is
a
the
house
bigger concern.
specifically for that. Yeah, right. But I'm specifically buying a house specific to all of my hobbies. So I'm looking at a 4 to 5 bedroom house that might have a guest room in it. Everything else has a different purpose. It's going to be
So
pretty ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, we're in the very early stages of it, but Vonnie and I have started kind of looking around, where we might end up. Is it still California? Is all of California too expensive? Will we go to NorCal? Will we go back to Buffalo? We've started thinking, but when we start talking about the houses we want, it really is a collection of what we would do with it. And we're both massive nerds. Vonnie's comic collection, I mean, dwarfs any collection of anything I have.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it even beats out comics. Maybe not in terms of, or it even beats out records. Maybe not in terms of space, but it's close. And I mean, her comic collection is humongous. She's also a figurine collector, like a statue and figurine collector. So those take up
Sure.
space. But yeah, we've started looking. It's like, okay, I need a decent kitchen. I would sacrifice so much for a kitchen because I cook all the time.
Hmm.
But I would need a basement or a room where I could put pinball machines. And she needs a
Yeah.
room for her statues. And I mean, and we're not having kids. We decided that, before we got that question out of the way before even like our third or fourth date. We were like, kids, no, okay, good. But yeah, so bedrooms are just spaces to display stuff used for our various hobbies. That's what it would end up becoming.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to on some level. And, my day job, I work from home with the
Right.
whole command center thing, but I've been doing the command center thing with streaming and everything else. So you've got to have a room for that. Well, that also becomes the toy and fun video game display behind, but then you've got to have a separate room for the practical collection. There's going to be space for movies because CDs, like I'm right there with you with the vinyl and the CDs,
Sure.
and but I've had stuff in storage for so long, and this is where it's going to be interesting when I move. There have been times I'm like, man, I want to hear that Crawl album, or I want to hear this or that, and it's no one has it for streaming anywhere, and the copy that I have on my computer is like a 128 kilohertz, 128 bit, and I was like, this ain't gonna do, bro. And I would just find it on eBay and buy another copy just so I could rip it again
Right.
because I didn't feel like going into storage and finding it. And I did that one time, even when all of the CDs were in boxes 2 rooms away from me. Like I was that lazy at one point. I was just like, it's gonna be way easier, less time investment to spend the $12. Um, but I find it interesting that there's even if you are the rainy day or you have a curated collection, which I think is it's appropriate, but it sounds hoity-toity, and I don't mean to. Uh, but
It's gamers
even
and collectors trying to make their problem sound better.
you're right.
It's. I mean, I say it too. I'm not calling people out. It's what I do too. But when you say you have a curated collection, you can be like, well, I may have 1,000 of these, but it's a curated collection. There's no trash, no
Right.
filler. So yeah.
Well, that's why I stray away from it, because I have a copy of Jack Nicklaus's Golf on NES, but the only reason I have it is because it's to remind me of a time I hung out with a buddy who just pulled out a suitcase of games and said, "Well, happy moving to Texas day. Pick anything you want." And I said, "All of these games are awesome. They're games I'm after, but I need to pick something that's so ridiculous I'll remember today."
Right.
So I picked Jack Nicklaus as well, so I always have that in my head. And but I do feel like as a good rule of thumb for me is if I touch something on my shelf
Hmm.
and I can't tell you a viable reason personally for me to have that, it shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
That typically is that's my rule of thumb. If
I
I
mean
can't justify it,
that's just bearded Marie Kondo. I mean that's exactly what it is.
yeah,
I mean literally take the time, and it's funny because what she says makes very good sense. It's what you say. It's what a lot of people I think who think about their collections really believe. If they were to take the time to look at them, you can definitely weed it down. Touch every single item in that collection and go, am I going to be bummed if I get rid of this tomorrow? When was the last time I listened to it? And I don't necessarily believe that there is another old adage that's like, if you haven't touched it in 6 months, you're never going to touch it again. I call
I
bullshit
don't
on
know
that.
about that.
Yeah,
I
I
do
call
too.
bullshit on that one. I definitely go back to stuff. But if the last time I listened to it wasn't memorable, or I can't remember why, or there wasn't some meaning there, then that's something you can probably get rid of. And holy shit, do I need to do that with my record collection? And I can't even fathom starting it. Like it would be a very difficult time. But yeah, you want to be able to like have a reason for having each thing. Then when you get attacked for having your collection, you're like, but aha, and you can tell stories about every single thing that's on your shelf. I look
Right.
insane
So
right now.
it's a roundabout way of being super snarky about you don't know me, you know.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. Even fucking t-shirts, man. Like I have so many
Yep.
black, metal t-shirts. It's like I didn't catch the toy collecting bug until last July. Between the beginning of the pandemic and last July,
Hmm.
it was Blu-rays and metal shirts and metal hats. That was what I was spending my money on, like hundreds upon hundreds of dollars every so often. Shirts, 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 hats, 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 shirts, shirts, hat, movie, 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 movie. And then the toy thing hit, and I just rotated like I'm dealing cards at a poker table. It's insane. Um, it's fucked up.
That was your
It's a
pandemic
weird.
hobby. That's what you took up during the pandemic.
Well, not took up so much as I have the time and the money
There you
now
go. Sure.
to do this. Someone asked me like, "Well, what do you mean by time?" It's like, "Well, I'm not commuting anymore."
Yeah,
So
no,
it's a 2 hour
that's a
break
lot
that
of
I would
fucking time,
spend.
man.
Yeah, and when you are working from home, there is a lot of downtime for most jobs. So it would be easy for me to go, "Well, I don't have this shirt," and plus, so many bands were crippled. They couldn't tour.
Yeah.
And it was a good way to support them and for them to make money. And there was merchandise that was being made available that you hadn't seen in, in some cases, 20 years.
I did a lot
Stuff
of
that,
band camp over
yeah,
the pandemic for that as well because they needed the money. So it's just like I don't know. I mean, I'd go and I'd be like, I guess I need this digitally too because I have it, 3 ways on vinyl, and I'd buy it.
right.
And yeah, no, that's great. And I noticed that too. A lot of merch, a lot of bands started putting out creative merch or new merch, maybe bands that had it in a while, because it was a way to get that monetary support that they lost through concerts.
And that's what I tell myself anyway.
Or a lot of
Absolutely.
demos and stuff got released. So
Sure.
they found interesting ways to get you to spend the money.
Yeah. And then, an example of that would be my buddies in Exhumed, which is a death metal band from California.
Yeah.
I did a couple tours with them back in the day, um, and I would talk to Matt, the guitarist vocalist, here and there. We've been friends, like I said, for years, but we were never a everyday talk kind of friend. It
Sure,
just
sure.
wasn't what it was. He catches wind that I start collecting toys, specifically like the Superpowers collection stuff, and he just starts bombarding me. He's like, dude, look at this. And to the point where he comes on the show and like is like, look at this box Lexor 7 that I have and all this stuff. And I was like, I never knew this about you, sir. So, these stupid plastic, polyvinyl, you know, boxes, molded things that we have that if you think about it at a purely chemical physical level, it's ridiculous. We have stacks of plastic in various formats of different colors and shapes that are
Mhm.
surrounded by like, yay me. It's and that something that ridiculous could reignite a friendship just on
Yeah,
the whim of, oh, you have this addiction to plastic as well, because that's all of this is, varying
right.
degrees of plastic. Like I can reach out right now and grab any one of about half a dozen toys. They're just sitting here for no reason. Like they don't have to, and they're just staring at me. You know, but each of them remind me of a memory or someone or something.
Yeah.
Um, and oh, this is a good comment I want to bring up before I forget. Melvor asks us all to support Cybertronic Spree's Kickstarter now. Yes. I don't know if you're
Oh
aware
yeah.
of who this is.
That's Billy and Jay's electronic music outfit. They did the Christmas album, right? Am I right?
Mm-mm.
No.
No,
Oh,
no, no.
I thought that was when Billy and Jay did the Christmas album. I don't
No.
know who Cybertronic Spree is.
Cybertronic Spree is a Canadian rock slash metal band
Oh.
that is made up of people who are Transformers. Like they dress up as
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I know who that's awesome.
they're doing their first original album this year.
Oh, so no covers.
And
That's cool.
nope, no covers this time because they did the whole Transformers the movie soundtrack, which was amazing.
Nice.
And it's rare when you have a band that has like a gimmick like that that also is actually really good.
Yeah,
Like
that's not so common.
I kickstarted for was it Galactic Empire, which was like they did all the Star Wars themes as progressive metal tunes, and they all
Mhm.
dressed up in like armor and stuff. They had one album, and it was all covers basically, and then they fizzled out. Like they did a tour, and that was it. And I was like, what more? What are
Come on.
you
Yeah.
what are you doing? um, but these guys have been persistent for many years, and
They've put in the work, they're going to stick around.
oh yeah, well, just to build those costumes and out of what looks like foam core and cardboard and meticulous paint. Um, just really cool stuff. And like their live shows that they would do have multiple covers of other stuff. Everything from like a Pat Benatar to the Transformers stuff and Survivor and whatever, and they're really good. And again, to play at that level in such an unwieldy outfit, even the drummer, I believe he's dressed up as Shockwave, which that's not the costume I would pick as a
No,
drummer.
that's not exactly the nimble. Yeah, no.
I would totally have picked Spike with the khaki shirt and the jeans and the hard hat. I'd been fine with it,
Right.
you know. Not these big shoulder pads and like, they had a second drummer who's dressed up as uh, Rumble, which is not much better. Still got the big squares on
Okay,
the
yeah.
shoulder. It's crazy. It's crazy. There's a question here from Ben. Says, uh, Herbert, the relationship with physical media, still have all my vinyl, some with heat and water damage. Oh, I thought that was a question.
Gotta be
Sorry.
careful
Yeah,
with that. Yeah.
you do. As most of my most expensively valued stuff and most prized possessions sit in an outdoor storage facility in Houston, Texas
Oh
for the
no.
last 2 years.
Oh no.
The only thing in
That
my
makes me
head,
so nervous, and it's not even my stuff.
right, in my head, it's like it's sitting static in one place and it's getting heated up and cooled down and heated up and cooled down. Now that means it's gonna be brittle when I get it. But no one's touched it. So
Sure.
hopefully it's okay. Now, if you were storing something like that with weird temperature changes and you were using things, I could see it being a problem.
Right.
But for game discs and CDs, for the most part, they're going to be okay.
Right.
For the most part. The only part of that that is even remotely concerning are the consoles. And
Well, I mean,
really.
honestly, if it gets too hot, especially if I would say in a place like Phoenix or in parts of Texas, yeah, consoles you'd want to worry about because the heating up and cooling down will stress solder joints.
Right. Exactly. And when it comes to Ian Hobbies, I realized that. I just didn't realize you were here. Sorry. I just saw Ian and I freaked and I was like, oh, it's for Ian. And I just clicked because I'm super detail oriented like that.
Oh, and I'm sorry to anyone if anyone's asking me questions. I actually did not log into anything, so I don't see the chat. So if anyone's asking me something, I apologize.
If you full screened our conversation, like if you take it out of full screen, you should be able to see chat if you want to.
It's out of full screen. It says there's a private chat on the side, but I see nothing there.
At the top, you should have an option to see comments.
Oh,
maybe yeah,
there it is. Look at that. Yeah. All right, wonderful.
No, you're good to go. But yeah, I worry about that a little bit, but at the same time, it's whatever. I'm sure it'll be fine when I finally get him up here. And it's just one of these things where I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, not that I don't want to have it done. I just don't want to do it.
Sure.
It's two storage things. It's a 4-hour drive each way. I don't feel like doing it. We're going to Retropalooza this weekend in the area. And there was a part of me that was like, maybe I should piggyback it. But then I thought about how I normally feel after a con.
Oh, yeah.
Awful. That is not the situation.
Awful. Yeah.
No, and I don't want to, after walking on cement at my size for 3 days, yeah, let's just pick up the heaviest, most expensive things that I own, put them in a truck, and drive them up here and unload them. No.
Absolutely not.
No, not so much. But I've kept you here a little over an hour. We normally run about an hour and a half with anything. So I do want to open up to the floor for an actual dedicated Q&A. So if you have any questions for anything we've talked about today or anything you want to know, now is the time. And we'll have it go on for another 10, 20 minutes or so, and then I'll kick you loose,
sure.
if that's okay with you.
Yeah, it works by me.
But I am going to take the moment to go into the low-hanging fruit questions.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm just gonna. Do you think that working at Luna for 15 years helped to speed up your personal jadedness with keeping games on the shelf?
Yes, I do. It definitely did. I can't say it didn't in any way, shape, or form. I think I would have gotten to that conclusion eventually, and I don't think it would have happened much later. But yes, Luna did accelerate it. Another part of Luna accelerating it wasn't all negative though. There was definitely the customers and the collectors that really grated on me and kind of, I got my fill of it. But another reason why working at Luna accelerated it was because if I get rid of all this shit, I'm surrounded by it every freaking day. The likelihood of it coming back through or seeing it again or being able to take it off the shelf and take it home for a night because, hey, I just want to play this, again and take it back. It did make getting rid of some of it easier. Because I never really felt like I was getting rid of it. I was always going to be surrounded by games.
And I would say that just by virtue of your association with the podcast, it's always going to be on your mind on some level. Mm-hmm. So it's, because people ask me similar questions about like being out of the music business and stuff. And I listen to the music all the time. I wear the clothes. I walk the walk. It's, that part of my life's never going to die just because I'm not sitting behind a drum set getting sweaty in front of 500 people. I'm okay. Like, I'm good. Yeah. Like, I don't need that anymore.
No, yeah, I get it. It's a similar thing. And, we got a question recently on the CU podcast and it was, is there anything from your collection you regret selling? Something like that. It's probably a little more specific, but when I sit here and I think 5 years removed from getting rid of the majority of my stuff, video game related, and I honestly can't think of anything that I've ever lost sleep over.
Which
We
is
live
an
in an
interesting.
age where like everything is so accessible that
Yeah, it's
I
true.
mean, this goes against what I said. There are certain collections that I need to have when shit hits the fan, music being one of them. For some people, like we said, it's more movies. Video games, I feel like, well, if everything shit hits the, you're not gonna be able to fucking do anything with them anyways. You need more, you know what I'm saying? Like records, you'll get by with electricity and a couple basic speakers, but video games, you need systems, you need a computer, you need something to play them on. There's so much more that goes into it that I don't ever think of it as like, an apocalyptic, oh shit, this is what I need when stuff goes down because I gotta have a hobby.
Right. It's like the person who's like a really big like FLAC player or emulation or whatever. They're going to need to stock up on car batteries. That's going to be their new collection for their
Right.
doomsdays. To have like a solar battery or some shit like that. Something that is kind of weirdly intertwined. But I suspect I know the answer to this one. Was there ever anything in your collection that was you were considering selling, but at the last second you stopped because there was a story attached to acquiring it that like there's like something along the lines of there's something about it that you're like, no,
Not
this memory.
exact not exactly, but I mean, so two answers, but uh in terms of just having something that I was about to sell and didn't, and I'm happy for it, two DS games, Azuna, The Unemployed Ninja 1 and 2. I love them. They're stupid expensive. I would never buy them again if I got rid of them. I wouldn't be sitting here crying if I got rid of them, but there was a convention I took them to, and as I'm putting them on the table, I'm like, no, we're going back home with these. I'm not getting rid of them. As far as something that's got an emotional attachment to me, I have two, and one is worth a lot of money. And it's not a lot, but a good amount. It's Valkyrie Profile for the PlayStation, PlayStation 1, great RPG. My buddy, my good friend Jay gave it to me before I left Buffalo because I always wanted to play it but couldn't find a copy. At the time, it was probably worth about $35. I never got rid of it, because he gave it to me, but I have watched that game go up in value to like 350, during the pandemic. And yeah, I never would. I there's very little in terms of a one-time monetary payment that I would accept for something like that. You can say $1,000 or $2,000, and I'm 40 years old and I know how quick $2,000 can go, in a blink of an eye to bills or something like that. No, I'm not going to get rid of the sentimental attachment.
And
And then the other,
that's the same reason that I'm the same way about a lot of my stuff is that
yeah,
you'd have to put a lot more zeros behind that before I'd consider it. Like I would have to be set for life to get rid of like the sentimental stuff.
right. You'd have
Um,
to like specifically look at what's problematic in my like checkbook or, get me a house. You would have to greatly affect my life in a positive way for me to get rid of some things. There's just not enough money behind it.
yeah, and like one of the games for me on that, since we're talking games, for me is Tecmo's Deception. It's kind of
That's
a
cool.
crap game.
I like it. I mean, it's not,
I
it
love
got
it.
better in later iterations for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But the first one was lent to me by my best friend.
Mm.
She was like, "Hey, you would like this." I lost a job at a girlfriend the first time that I started playing that game
Oh,
because
geez.
I would wake up, play it, and go to sleep. Wake up, play it, go to sleep, and every other day would be like a case of beer, large pizza, like for like 2 weeks,
Right.
just grinding through that game to the point where I had maxed out everything you could do. And the very last boss comes out, which is like this wizard. And there's only one place that you can conjure this one red dragon monster, and it's in the Great Hall when you first come into the castle. So I lure him into the front Great Hall, conjure the red dragon, kills him one hit, and I'm like, heh, worth it. It's just like, and it's a memory I can never replicate.
Sure.
And when I was in the Marines, I saw it in a pawn shop for $10, and I said, "Give me that!" And I just grabbed it. And then I have every game in the series kind of off by itself, just because the memory of playing the first one is so prevalent. I remember when they announced the fourth one that came out for the PS4 and the Vita. I was like, It was like someone told me Cliff Burton had come back from the dead and was rejoining Metallica, or something. It was crazy. But it's funny. Again, these little lumps of plastic, you can look at that and it's bing, it sparks this thing like in Darkman or something. It's
Yeah.
weird. Question from chat for you, Ian. What is your most played cart on the Evercade? The announcement's coming up on the 2-year anniversary on the 31st.
So for Evercade, there's two carts. It's either the Xeno Crisis. Can't remember the name of the other game, which is sad. I don't mean to be mean, but I can't. Tanglewood. Xeno Crisis is phenomenal. Plays great with the D-pad and the 4 face buttons. I love that sort of quick, very brutally difficult game. So that one stays in there most of the time. But if it's not that, it's whatever Atari cart has Yar's Revenge on it. I will just turn on Yar's Revenge, and I love Yar's Revenge. I don't have an Atari to play it on, so that was actually perfect, and I can't get enough of it. So Yar's Revenge or Xeno Crisis, both very quick pick up and play type games.
Nice. Yeah, someone, Nerd Rage, which is a friend of the channel, sent me I think it's a 5200. I think because
Love the
I have a
5600.
I have a Vader 2600. That was like
Mhm.
the grail of that era for me.
Yeah.
Got that right before I moved to Texas. I've never hooked it up. It's still sitting in the box it came in. It's just sitting in Houston. And then I said that at some point, and he sent me the 52, which I still haven't hooked up because I don't have a setup to do that in this small space, which is like, oh, because I want to play that thing.
It's a bad system, but it's a very sentimental system for me, so I adore it. Shitty controllers and all.
That's the thing. Like with all the stuff out there, with all these companies that are making excellent second, third party control, why has no one made a 5200 controller?
If someone's made a decent one, well, someone replaces all the contacts with gold contacts. There's a person, I think, in North California. You can look them up. They still do it. Their website is probably still ancient, who will take old 5200 controllers and convert them to like modern durable controllers that can stand the tests of time.
Really?
It's still a shitty non-centering analog. You know, I have yet to see anyone come out and make a 5200 controller that doesn't have that. But at this point, maybe you can't. Maybe that's why. There is that Wiko controller, but it's still an analog controller. You can just tighten the joystick up significantly so it pops back more, but it's still analog. I don't know if you could do a digital controller for the 5200. Maybe.
I don't think it would know how to handle that.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I mean, I could be totally off base, but I don't think it could either. Otherwise, I feel like someone would have done it. In this day and age, 5200 is not that unpopular that someone would not have made a new controller for it.
right. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that the person that does that is on Atari Age, and there's a good chance that I know who you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
probably.
the chance. That's a weird subsect of our culture. Is that particular forum like the people that are that into Atari? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I love the Atari games I have, and if there's one thing that I'll never pass up, it's a box of Atari games at a yard sale. I don't even look at what's in there; I just grab it. If it's $10, give me it, and then I'll get
There's
rid of the stuff.
probably 10 Atari 2600 games I would call essential. And I don't know that I could list them now, but I bet you I could find my essentials within 10. And those 10 are like great games that I love to play, but I really don't need a whole lot out of that. But like Pitfall, River Raid, and most of them, by the way, are Activision titles.
Oh yeah,
Stuff like that. Fantastic. The Atari games, the actual games Atari made, most of them are dog shit.
crap. Oh yeah,
or
I
or
agree.
or they were great arcade games, but they need a trackball, or they need 5 buttons, or they need something that they didn't replicate well on the Atari.
Right. And that's where I think the ColecoVision comes in. I think the ColecoVision was like the best iteration on that type of stuff.
I loved it. I
Um,
had one. I got rid of it for the opposite reason. I had negative memories attached to it, but I loved it when I had it. Like, a great little system. All the arcade ports were fun.
yeah, it was the first one that we had. Like the first video game system I ever played was a black and white Pong console that was built into a black and white TV. And then my grandparents had an Atari 2600, but we were never allowed to play it because the adults were always playing on it. Then we got a ColecoVision, and then the Atari suddenly became available, so I got the switch hit between the two. And I've told the story a few times, so I'll tell you the short version. my childhood ColecoVision was in my mother's basement at the time of her death. Went home to, get everything figured out, get the house ready to sell. And I had put, a little tag, do not throw this away, send this to, because I'd flown in. I couldn't fly home with this because it was in
Sure.
like the console and the whole
It's a
thing.
massive box, yeah.
The video game console caddy thing with the fake wood grain with the plastic cover, like those.
I love
Yeah,
those.
me too. Like that's the best way to keep a ColecoVision. I don't care how gaudy they are; they're perfect. They got game storage right there.
Yeah, they're
The
great.
best. Of course, we had like the original black controllers plus the white Gemini ones that were sold as well, like the cream color white Gemini ones.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, send me that when you sell the house. I get a call 2 months later from my uncle, who said, "Oh, no easy way to say this. Someone came into the house and stole most of the stuff in the house, and it turned out to be my late mother's boyfriend's son, who thought he was getting screwed on the quote inheritance unquote."
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and my uncle said, "I wanted to get that out of the way, but I have to ask you a question." I'm like, "What's that?" He says, "Do you want me to go find him?" And he was serious. He was like, "I'm going to beat the shit out of this dude, and I'm going to at least get that ColecoVision because I know how much that meant to you." And I'm like, "Cork, it's a piece of plastic.
That's big.
It's not worth you going to jail because I know you. I know what would
Right.
happen. And as much joy as that would bring me before you went to jail, it's not." And that's 6 years ago now, and I still haven't bought a ColecoVision. But I know someone who is bringing one to retro. So I'm thinking I might go home with one this year. We'll see.
It's always good to have some things you want that you don't own, because that keeps you going to conventions and having a good time. And I mean, it's not all, I know, the collectors that I tend not to care for so much are the ones where it's all about the hunt. That's it for them. But I do like to have some thrill of the hunt still. It's why like there are, if it's a new record coming out, I could buy it from an artist online. Oftentimes I'll go to my record store and get it, new, or ask them to pre-order it. But with older records that I want to add to my collection, I almost never do online shopping, because what's the point if you have everything you want all at once? I want to be able to go out still and enjoy, the record stores, a day at a flea market, and find those things.
And for me, the hunt has become less about finding things I want at a good deal or whatever, or a good
Right.
dill, I would say, because he says deal like dill. I don't know what that's about. It's not a Texas thing. It's just Bill. Um, but for me, it is finding things I either didn't know existed
Sure.
or things that are just cool that I wouldn't ever buy, but just to be able to, like, hey, I saw that. That's cool in person. Um, because I don't have a problem with online shopping, and I compartmentalize the cherry picking a little bit. So, for example, I said I eventually want all like a doesn't have to be a first pressing, but I want the original covers, all the vinyl for Napalm Death up to this point, which is not an easy proposition. They put out a lot of shit, and I only got a handful. And I'll Discogs all day long on that shit because it's so niche. Like, you're not going to find that at a garage sale.
No.
It's just not going to happen.
Sure.
And vinyl stores, again, because it's niche, you might find it, but it's.
I think that's a lot going to be location based too. Like, there's stores that I go to here, and every time I go, why the fuck is this here? And I buy it, but there's always those really deep cuts, so that keeps me going.
Right.
In a place where like the record scene is not as big, or you don't have like a healthy supply of people buying, and the key here is selling back. If you don't have the people selling back who are really into it, you're not going to get it. So, you really got to foster that relationship. There are certainly places where, like you said, I would be more than happy to do my shopping online. But since I can come up on stuff around here, I like to roll the dice.
Well, you're in California too. Let's be honest.
Right. No, I know. I'm in a pretty good place for it.
Like in DFW, if you're looking for obscure underground metal stuff, the people here that are into it, or at least the ones that I've met anyway, they're like, it's mine, it's mine. It's very, very, very golem, precious kind of thing, which, hey, I get it. It was like that in Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area when I was growing up. And But if you're in big hubs like Chicago, Southern California, Northern California, DC area, parts of Canada, stuff like that. Oh yeah, there's always going to be stuff going in and out. But even to use Billy and Jay as an example, like even though like the tagline was always like Texas is a big place, there's lots of games, we got to put them in our collection. This and that. They still had to go like
Yeah.
all over the
Right.
state
Sure.
to make that happen. And it wasn't like going down the street to the closest, biggest flea market.
Right.
You,
They
they
got
had
those
to like,
games. They got those games because they drove around a big state called Texas. It wasn't.
right.
It wasn't good collecting because it wasn't like it wasn't that Texas was a great place to do collecting if you wanted to stay local. It was that it was big enough that they could certainly find stuff if they looked.
Exactly. And Melvor could certainly confirm, I'm sure,
Yeah.
unless he fell asleep, which he often does. And that's okay. I love you, brother. I had McDonald's today, and I thought of you, Melvor, by the way. I had a double quarter pounder cheese. That apparently is his thing. Double quarter pounder with cheese. Who knew?
It's a good.
The
It's a
whole
good
thing.
burger. It's a good burger.
Put a
I,
half
I, I don't
pound of
I don't
meat in that
understand
guy
people
to
who shit talk it. I think it's fine.
you know, I don't understand the trend of shit talking Arby's myself. I grew up on that stuff. Like I remember when you could buy Arby's sauce in a bottle at the
Yeah,
restaurant.
I do too.
But like somewhere in the early part of the century, Arby's is nasty. Like, well, so what if it looks like a bad porno on a bun? I don't care. It tastes good. Like it's fine. And there's your confirmation, F, Billy, and J, which means you are correct, sir. Uh, uh, so I don't see any other pertinent questions in chat. I have taken up a lot of your time. I know that just based on this conversation, I could talk to you for a couple days if I had enough runway. But
Sure.
uh, I think we could save that for another day.
Yeah.
You probably need to go cook something to eat because you. For those of you who don't know, he came straight from work, came home, sat down, turned the thing on, comes in the chat. I didn't give him any time to breathe. So,
Well, I work from home, so I mean it's not so bad. I actually got a lot of cleaning done during the day today, so yeah, it was fine. But the end of my day is where it actually could get pretty busy, and it didn't today, so it worked out nicely.
well, it's good. With what I do, which is online training of faculty and stuff, I would do education software stuff. I make my own schedule. Like I can block time and say you can't schedule me during this time. So from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, maybe I'm not. I've never taken a meeting during that time in the last year. I have. I'll never tell you. Um, but but that's it. But I do appreciate your time. If you could stick around a few minutes, I'd love to just wrap things up.
Yeah,
Uh,
sounds good.
Is there anything you'd like to say or plug before you go into the ether, sir?
I mean, if anyone knows me from anything, they probably already have watched the CU podcast, but definitely check that out with my co-host Pat. It's mostly video game related, but I also do a podcast called Extra Napkins with my. He's been my closest friend since we were 14, and we're about 40 now. So we've been through quite a bit. It's really just a stoner cast where we get high and talk about food, go try local restaurants, take questions and things like that. And other than that, no, I don't do a whole lot online, and I'll probably keep it that way.
Although I will go ahead and plug your Twitter, which is at PXLSICLE,
Thanks.
for takes of varying temperatures, but almost always a good time.
Yeah, a lot of takes, whether you like them or not, I can't guarantee.
Yeah, I have grown to appreciate that. I have you on notifications, so I read everything you tweet for the most part. Not to be a creeper, but just because normally I'm either going to smile, laugh, or just go, "Oh, Ian," and
Yeah,
all of those are valid things. I'm like, okay, fair
I
enough.
think Ian is a response I get a lot. Like, yeah,
I think I've actually replied to several of your tweets. Oh, Ian.
probably.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Uh, but thank you so much for your time. I'd love to have you on again at some point.
Certainly.
But we'll talk in a few minutes, pal.
All right.
Cheers. Folks, thanks for being here. I know it was a bit of a weird show starting late and everything. And speaking of starting late, tomorrow night, birthday stream. I'm going to be talking to people across the pond for work until late. It'll be 8 o'clock Eastern until I'm done with that, and then I've got to wrap a few things up, and I'll come straight over here. I will have a scheduled time of 8:30 Eastern for the show, but I will probably come on early. So if you want to be here right from the start, watch me have the first beer or whatever. Be here a little bit early, like 15 minutes after the hour. But I will post that here at some point in the next 24 hours. I don't know. Whatever happens, happens. Point being, I appreciate you all, and I will see you this week. Tomorrow, I guess. Well, that's good enough for me. I have so much energy, guys, it's not even funny. I'm going to expend it somewhere else. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow night. Bye.